Football League recently suspended 5 players for gambling. 3 were banned until next season, at least for betting on football. 2 others were suspended for placing bets on non-football games at team facilities. This as the NFL has embraced legalized wagering as a major source of revenue. It even has a franchise, the Las Vegas Raiders, that plays near world-famous casinos. We go now to sports agent Doug Eldridge, founder of DLE Agency and Achilles Public Relations. Doug, great to have you back on. Some say the suspensions by the NFL are hypocritical given how much the league has embraced legalized gambling. But, others say the bans are really important for the integrity of pro football. I'm curious, what's your take?
Well, it really is in many ways a tightrope that the league has to walk. They do $16 billion in revenue each year, and they had a record $1.8 billion in revenue this past year. And a big chunk of that, Tracy, was actually from the official sports betting partnerships. Now, good for thee, not for me. We hear that phrase bandied about a lot, and I'm not going to throw the lawn darts of hypocrisy, but here's where it becomes a tightrope. On one hand, they have a multi-billion-dollar revenue stream through legalized betting in the wake of the 2018 SCOTUS decision. But on the other hand, the employees of the NFL, the more than 1,500 players that make up the league, they really have a very simple but very stringent code of conduct when it comes to sports gambling. No wagers can be made on any league or team property or event. So the locker room, the team bus, the plane, finally the field, things along those lines. Secondly, no wagers can be made on any NFL games. Now, these 5 players that were punished last week, 3 of whom got indefinite suspensions, which means they're out for at least a year, and then have to petition to be readmitted, and the other 2 got 6 games. They violated that simple but strict and stringent and arguably scathing mandate when it comes to betting. I think that there was a little bit of punitive instinct in this. In other words, we want to send a very clear message by making a very clear example of these 5 players, because the last thing that we want to have to do as a league is to implement punishment related to a revenue stream. So they went hard on those guys for a reason, and they definitely got the pound of flesh in the process.
Yeah, Doug, also in the news recently, 7 U.S. professional sports leagues joined NBC Universal and Fox to help ensure a, quote, responsible approach to sports betting ads. What will this approach look like, do you think? And what does it signal that these leagues and networks really felt compelled to address sports betting?
Well, I think it makes sense. And in many ways, Tracy, it's almost an acknowledgement of the evolution and legitimacy of this, not only as a business, but as a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? Just like there are advertising guidelines or really restrictions insofar as how alcohol or cigarettes or firearms are marketed, not only across the United States, but specifically with age restrictions, but also compliance restrictions in terms of messaging, et cetera. So it makes sense that they would do this from a legal standpoint, from a financial standpoint, and essentially from a regulatory standpoint. But when you back out to 50,000 feet, in many ways, this is a vice. And so what they're trying to do is really establish rumble strips in the hopes that the messaging and the inevitable consumption of this won't go off the road, or at least if and when it does, they can say, prophylactically, we implemented standards and codes of conduct so that we knew that we were responsibly messaging this to our target audience. How that was ultimately received, caveat emptor, buyer beware. So it makes sense that they would do it, and I'm glad that they're doing it.
Yeah, Doug, and I know you represent professional athletes in several sports, including pro football. Do you find yourself, talking with them about gambling maybe more than you did a few years ago? And if so, what's your message to them?
I do. I mean, for example, look at this Super Bowl. Well, actually, look at this recent March Madness just last month. An estimated 30 million Americans, 1 in 10, assuming, for the sake of round numbers, 300 million, 330 million in this country, basically 1 in 10 Americans were going to make some form of wager, not necessarily on a gambling app, even if it was just a backyard bet or an office pool, something along those lines. 1 in 10. So gambling has always been there, but it's always been kind of the sword of Damocles. I say all of that to say that when you have clients all over the country and all over the world, and they have the ability to make a wager in the palm of their hand at a red light or sitting at an airport gate, The temptation is always there. But what I say to them is, look, you've worked your entire life to get to this point. You have earned every penny of every dollar you have ever made. Why would you squander it? Just from an asset management standpoint, but then especially in the NFL, guys, it is so difficult to get in, and it is even harder to stay in. Why would we do anything that would risk our career? You have the rest of your life to gamble if you so choose. For the narrow window, the average career in the NFL is 3 years. Why on earth would we even contemplate this?
Absolutely, Doug. Thanks so much for coming on and weighing in. Always appreciate your insights.